It was just past sunset when David pulled into the long driveway of his lakeside mansion, the warm glow of the outdoor lights bouncing off his sleek black SUV. He had been away on a 2-week business trip, eager to finally relax in the comfort of his own home. But as the gates swung open, something felt wrong. The front garden was perfectly manicured, but not by his usual landscaper. It was rearranged. Patio furniture he didn't own sat neatly on the porch. A string of lights hung between the pillars, swaying in the breeze. And in the window, he saw movement. Someone was inside. As he parked and stepped out, a middle-aged woman in pastel yoga pants and a floral cardigan stormed out the front door, arms crossed. "Excuse me," she snapped. "What are you doing here?" David blinked, utterly confused. "This is my house." Her jaw tightened. "No, I've been living here for the past 2 weeks. And if you don't leave, I'll call the police." Before David could even respond, she pulled out her phone, muttering something about a strange man trespassing. As she dialed. David's pulse quickened, but his voice stayed calm. "Ma'am, I think there's been some mistake. I own this property, been in my name for 5 years. I have the deed, the mortgage records, everything." The woman, whose name he would later learn was Karen, let out a short, sharp laugh. "Nice try. You're not going to fool me. I'm part of the HOA, and I know everyone who's supposed to be here. You're not one of them." David's brow furrowed. "Of course I'm not, there's no HOA here." Karen ignored him, speaking louder into her phone. "Yes, officer, he's on the property right now. Acting aggressive." David took a slow breath, pulling his phone from his pocket. "All right," he said, hitting record. "Since you're calling the police, we might as well get this on video for when they arrive." Karen's eyes narrowed. "You think you can intimidate me with a camera? Go ahead. You'll be in handcuffs in 10 minutes. David didn't reply. He just stood at the base of the steps, filming calmly as the sound of sirens began to echo faintly in the distance. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars rolled up, their lights painting the driveway in sharp flashes of red and blue. David kept his phone steady, capturing everything. Karen rushed toward the first officer as he stepped out. "Thank goodness you're here. This man is trespassing and refusing to leave. I've been living here for weeks, and I'm scared for my safety." David raised his hand slightly. "Officer, before we go any further, I need you to know, this is my home. I've just returned from a business trip, and I have proof of ownership right here." The younger officer glanced between them, clearly caught off guard. "Ma'am," he asked Karen, "do you have any paperwork to show you live here?" Karen waved her hand dismissively. "I don't need paperwork. Everyone in the neighborhood knows me. I'm with the HOA." David stepped forward slowly, holding out his tablet, where the property deed glowed on the screen. "Here's the title, the tax records, and the mortgage statement, all in my name. You can even check the security footage from my system, it's been recording the entire time I've been gone." The older officer's eyes narrowed slightly. "We'll take a look at that footage. Ma'am, could you please wait over there while we check this out?" Karen froze for a second, her confident smirk fading just a bit. Karen crossed her arms tighter, clearly irritated at the shift in tone. "This is ridiculous. I've been here for 2 weeks. I've been taking care of the place, watering plants, keeping it tidy. If anything, he should be thanking me." David raised an eyebrow. "Taking care of the place? You moved my furniture, replaced my locks, and somehow thought that meant you owned it?" The older officer gestured toward the porch. "Ma'am, how did you even get inside this property in the first place?" Karen hesitated, her eyes darting toward the garden. "A friend gave me a key." David didn't miss a beat. "A friend? That's interesting, because I've never given anyone a spare key. And the security logs show a lock was changed the day after I left." The younger officer leaned in to whisper something to his partner, then turned to Karen. "Do you have any proof, utility bills, lease agreement, mail in your name, anything at all tying you to this address?" Karen's voice wavered now. "I didn't think I needed that. This neighborhood trusts me." David tapped on his phone, pulling up security clips from 2 weeks ago. Clear as day, there was Karen dragging boxes into the house and unloading them in the living room. The officers exchanged a look. One of them muttered, "That's breaking and entering." Karen's face flushed crimson. "Breaking and entering? No, that's not what happened," she stammered. "I was, house sitting." "Yeah, house sitting. Someone asked me to." David tilted his head, his voice calm but edged with steel. "House sitting without the homeowner's permission. That's a new one." The older officer stepped closer to Karen. "Ma'am, you understand that occupying a property without consent, especially after changing locks, is a criminal offense?" Karen tried to laugh it off, but it came out shaky. "You're making it sound worse than it is. I was just enjoying the space. The view. The neighborhood." David kept the camera trained on her. "Enjoying it enough to move in my bedroom? Enough to invite friends over for a barbecue? Because my security footage caught all of that too." The younger officer pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to collect your things and step outside while we verify Mr. Bennett's documents. If you refuse, we may have to remove you." Karen's mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but the sight of the officers waiting with patient, unblinking stares made her pause. Her confident demeanor was crumbling fast. Karen huffed, turning on her heel and storming inside. The officers followed, staying just close enough to make sure she didn't try anything. David remained on the porch, still recording, his voice low and steady as he narrated the events for his own record. Through the open doorway, he watched Karen sweep around the living room, tossing clothes and toiletries into a duffel bag. "This is such a waste of time," she muttered under her breath. "I was keeping the place alive. It would have been empty without me." The older officer responded firmly. "Empty or not, it wasn't yours to occupy. That's the law." Karen zipped her bag with an angry yank, then snatched a pair of sunglasses from the counter, David's sunglasses. He took a step forward. "That's mine." The younger officer immediately reached out, taking the sunglasses from her hand and placing them back on the counter. "Let's keep things respectful." When Karen finally stepped outside, David stood his ground, the camera still rolling. The officers asked her one last time if she had any proof she was allowed to be there. She shook her head, muttering something about neighbors vouching for her. "Ma'am," the older officer said, "you need to leave the premises now. You are not to return without written permission from Mr. Bennett. If you do, you'll be arrested for trespassing." Karen's lips tightened, but this time, she didn't argue. She just trudged down the driveway toward the street, her duffel bag bouncing against her side. David exhaled slowly, watching Karen disappear into the night. The flashing patrol lights faded as one of the officers turned toward him. "Mr. Bennett, would you like to press charges?" He hesitated for a moment. Part of him wanted to end the whole ordeal right there and reclaim his peace. But another part, the part that had just endured being accused, insulted, and locked out of his own home, wasn't ready to let it slide. "Yes," David said evenly. "I want a full report filed. And I'd like the footage preserved as evidence." The younger officer nodded. "We've already documented the scene. If you can send us the security clips, we'll attach them to the case." David quickly shared the files from his phone, along with scans of his ownership documents. The officers confirmed everything matched county records. "Looks solid," the older officer said. "We'll submit this to the district attorney. They'll decide if charges go forward." As they wrapped up, one of the neighbors, a man from 2 houses down, wandered over, looking sheepish. David? I think I might have told Karen you were away for a couple weeks. She said she wanted to watch the place. I didn't know she'd actually move in." David looked at him for a long second before replying. "Next time, just call me. Because this could have ended a lot worse." By the time the patrol cars pulled away, the night was quiet again, almost too quiet. David stepped inside, taking in the strange version of his home. The air smelled faintly of lavender candles, the walls were decorated with pictures he didn't recognize, and his furniture had been rearranged in ways that made no sense. He moved from room to room, filming everything. The guest bedroom was piled high with Karen's clothing, some still on hangers. The kitchen counters were cluttered with groceries he hadn't bought, and his expensive espresso machine had a sticky note that read, "For HOA guests only." David shook his head in disbelief. 2 weeks, he muttered. She really made herself at home. He spent the next hour removing Karen's belongings, boxing them up carefully, and leaving them by the front gate for her to collect. Every so often, he caught himself laughing, not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd it almost didn't feel real. As he finally sat down in his favorite leather chair, David opened his phone and drafted a post for the neighborhood group. "If anyone tells you they're house-sitting for me, they're lying. I don't use house-sitters. Call me directly if you see anything suspicious." Within minutes, comments started pouring in, neighbors apologizing, others shocked, and a few sharing that Karen had pulled similar stunts before in other areas. David leaned back, a small smile forming. At least now, everyone would know the truth. And Karen? She'd think twice before trying to claim someone else's home again. The next morning, David woke up to a phone buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, and alerts filled his screen. Apparently, the neighborhood post had gone viral overnight. People from other towns were chiming in, sharing their own run-ins with self-appointed HOA enforcers who overstepped boundaries. One message caught his eye. It was from a local real estate agent. "David, you might want to know. Karen has a reputation. She's been moving into empty properties for years. Always claims she's protecting the neighborhood, but she leaves a mess every time." David shook his head, the absurdity sinking in even deeper. But then another notification popped up, this time from the police. The message was short and direct. "Karen has been formally charged with trespassing and illegal occupancy. Court date set for next month." He felt a wave of satisfaction. It wasn't about revenge, it was about setting a clear line. People like her thrived when no one pushed back. Later that afternoon, as David was on his porch enjoying a coffee, a few neighbors stopped by. One older woman chuckled. "You know, she told us you invited her to live here. Said you were some big shot too busy to care." David smirked, sipping his drink. "Well, I guess she cared a little too much." The small group laughed, but David's mind was already elsewhere. He had security upgrades to make, and a quiet determination that something like this would never happen again. 2 weeks later, David received a certified letter from the district attorney's office. Inside was the official case summary. Karen's charges included trespassing, unlawful entry, and property damage. The evidence he provided, deed copies, security footage, and police body cam recordings, was airtight. That same afternoon, his lawyer called. "David, with the proof we have, she doesn't stand a chance. The DA's pushing for a plea deal, but they're also open to restitution. If you want her to pay for the lock replacements, landscaping fixes, and cleaning, now's the time to say it." David didn't hesitate. "I want every cent back. Not because I need the money, but because she needs to understand there are consequences." The day of the hearing, David arrived early at the courthouse. Karen was already there, her once defiant expression replaced by a nervous, pale look. She avoided eye contact as her lawyer whispered in her ear. When the judge entered, the case moved quickly. The charges were read aloud, the evidence shown, and within minutes, Karen's attorney stood up. "Your Honor, my client will plead guilty to trespassing and unlawful entry, and agrees to pay full restitution to the homeowner." David sat quietly, arms folded, as the judge finalized the agreement. It wasn't about winning, it was about closing a chapter. As they left the courtroom, Karen muttered without looking at him, "This isn't over." David paused, meeting her gaze just long enough to respond, "For you, it is." News of the court case spread quickly through the community, partly thanks to the neighborhood group post and partly because people couldn't believe someone had the audacity to move into a stranger's mansion. For days, David's phone lit up with messages of support. Some neighbors dropped off cookies and wine, joking that it was their way of saying, "Welcome back to your own home." Others asked for advice on upgrading their own security systems. David, meanwhile, wasted no time. He had a state-of-the-art camera system installed, motion sensors, smart locks, and even a live monitoring service that would call him instantly if anything suspicious happened. One evening, as he reviewed the new system on his tablet, he spotted something on the footage from earlier that day, Karen's car slowly creeping past his house before speeding off when she noticed the cameras. David shook his head but didn't feel the same tension he had before. Now, she couldn't set foot on his property without triggering alarms, and the police would be there before she even made it up the driveway. That night, sitting on his porch with a cup of tea, David felt a rare calm settle over him. The whole ordeal had been exhausting, but it had also reminded him of something important. Peace of mind wasn't just about where you lived, but about standing your ground when it mattered most. Months later, life had returned to normal. David's mansion stood just as it always had, quiet, secure, and entirely his. The garden was back to its original design, the furniture in its rightful place, and every trace of Karen's 2-week stay had been erased. The court case wrapped up with her paying restitution in full. Word around town was that she'd moved to another city, though David suspected she'd eventually try her house-sitting scheme again somewhere else. At least here, everyone knew better. One Saturday afternoon, David hosted a small barbecue for his closest neighbors. Laughter filled the air as steaks sizzled on the grill and kids played by the lake. At one point, someone raised a glass and said, "To David, for reminding us all to lock our doors and stand up for ourselves." David chuckled, clinking his glass with theirs. "And to knowing who your real neighbors are." As the sun dipped low and the lake shimmered in gold, David took a quiet moment to appreciate what he'd fought for, not just the bricks and walls of his mansion, but the sense of safety and dignity that came with protecting it. The cameras rolled silently in the background, but tonight, they captured only smiles, music, and the sound of a home truly at peace.